going as expected in terms of intensity, moving northeast at 16 miles an hour. But the big question, the one that is going to be the biggest factor in how this impacts our area, is just where that wobble occurs. So when we look at these surge numbers, and again, that is going to impact surge. More than anything, surge. Look, if this thing goes 20 miles more to the north, the wind changes will be minor. I mean, there might be a little more wind in northern Pinellas or southern Pasco. But what will be dramatically different is the surge totals. And you guys know this. We've been talking about it for days on end. So wherever landfall occurs, wherever that eye occurs, crosses land, at that point and to the right is where the surge will be the highest. Imagine a counterclockwise, a little spin going on right there as it's coming in, right? And it's just going to push the water, because surge has nothing to do with winds. It's all about how big a storm is that literally pushes the water to the coast, okay? So at the point of landfall, right along the coast and just below it, that is where the surge is going to be 9 to 13 feet. In comparison, Helene was about 8 or 9. I think it maxed out in some places nearly 10. Higher in Horseshoe Beach, where landfall occurred. So that is our concern, because if this were to wobble 20 miles more to the north as opposed to the east, and let's be honest, we usually see a wobble a little bit closer to the east. Typically, not always, but usually that's what it happens. But we are just so close to having this go into the bay and potentially bumping up the surge from what would likely, like, I'll call it like I see it here. If you have a landfall in Sarasota or just north of Sarasota, you got a surge of 3 to 5 feet in the bay. I don't see anything higher than that if that landfall is that far south, because you will have a legitimate offshore flow. Now, as it moves across, you might see a little more water coming in, but...
They made prepaid the new contract? Tello Mobile keeps it flexible. We do prepaid and we truly mean it. No need to pay into
Pinellas County, into the bay, and into Sarasota. And there's other sites that are using the actual forecast track from the Hurricane Center to determine the surge. Here's why you're seeing that 10 to 15. Because the Hurricane Center wants to make darn sure that every person out there sees what could be the worst case scenario. They don't want anybody afterwards saying, I didn't know. Makes perfect sense. Now, the challenge with that is the forecast, the official forecast, is well to the south of where that would be a 10 to 15 foot surge. But again, the Hurricane Center believes that, I agree with them. It's tricky. It's a challenge. Because I've had this question 11 billion times in the last 2 or 3 days. I don't get it. Why is it 10 to 15 feet if the storm's going to make landfall 30 or 40 miles to the south? It's a valid question. But I'm telling you, that's why they've done it. So what we've done here is we're showing you what the Hurricane Center is saying, but we're telling you that if this landfall is more central Manatee south, there ain't no way in the world that they're going to have an 8 to 12 foot surge in the bay. But if this gets closer to the Skyway, which would be a wobble, right? A wobble, if that were to happen, then the numbers would jump dramatically. Let me tell you something. I was talking to a buddy of mine who worked for the insurance industry, and meteorologist, local guy, went to Palm Harbor, great guy. Parents are probably watching right now. They live in Trinity. And he deals with a lot of insurance numbers. And Katrina is the all-time costliest hurricane in the United States, $200 billion. He told me that if this storm went into Sarasota, or just to the north of Sarasota, he estimates that the loss would be $100 billion. If it went into the bay, the loss would be about $200 billion, maybe a 175. So that 30 miles is the difference in about 75 to $100 billion in additional losses, because the water and the surge would be significantly higher in the bay than it would be if it's south. And, Jason and I have been talking about it. Greg's been talking about it. Shay and Allie, we've been doing our little get-togethers and talking about it. And that possibility absolutely exists. It does. And see now, and I'm going to toss over to Jason in a minute, but now we are no longer looking at models. This is when you throw the models out the window and you look out the window. It's called nowcasting. And it's no different than what you're doing. So with all the technology and all the science and all the models that we have, when you get 4 to 5 hours out, look, there isn't any kind of a magic, well, let's look at the high, super duper resolution model and see how it's showing. No, the models are the models. They're math problems. That's all they are. And when you get this close, no one on Earth can predict where those wobbles are going to go. So as you're sitting at home waiting, the timetable, we're already seeing some of the heavy rain coming through. We're about to see, it's about to get real. Starting in Sarasota County, we're going to start to see more power outages. And again, this is the track from the Hurricane Center. At this point, the track is practically meaningless. We know it's going to move in the next 4 or 5 hours, but where that 10, 20, 30-mile difference is the difference from catastrophic loss in the downtown area compared to a glancing blow, and unfortunately, that kind of loss for areas around Sarasota and off to the north. So there's your wind field. This moves onshore. Hurricane force winds start to move onshore, within the next couple of hours. But this is another perfect example of what we talked about with the rain, because you have a system that's split in half. We've been saying it for days. If you live in our southern counties and this comes through, I'm telling you tonight at 9 o'clock, you could probably go up and see some stars. And yet you might still have 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Higher if you live in Sarasota or Manatee County. But the southern half has no rain, not a lot. The northern half does. Citrus, Hernando, Pasco, Pinellas, northern Hillsborough County, you're all going to see easily 10 to 12 inches of rain, and some even more than that. Winds, obviously, I'll go out with this again. You're looking at winds, hurricane force, sustained and gusts across our southern counties this evening. It's going to lead to widespread power outages. But I'll say this again. The extreme winds, the ones that are going to do significant damage, it's a very small window. We're talking 5, 6 miles tops. You go out another 20 or 30 miles, you might have 65, 75 miles an hour wind. So here's my message here. If you look at our entire viewing area, from Citrus County to Sarasota County to Highlands County and everybody in between, when you look at this area, the overwhelming majority of our region, of our viewing area, will see winds of 65 to 80 miles an hour. There will be some spots that will have gusts significantly higher. Then you'll have that smaller area that is going to have most of the wind damage. But overall, when you look back at what's going to happen here, it's always the water. It's always the water that causes the catastrophic damage. And that is still, and it pains me to say this, Jason, because we're 4 or 5 hours out, and we're still watching back and forth to determine where this is actually going to go. And it's frustrating for us. You know how frustrating it is for folks at home.
So Dennis, while you were on, you didn't see this. This is concerning. Come over here, if you don't mind. Give me your expertise and your thoughts. So there's the 4 o'clock position.
Down to 125, there is a little bit of
good news there.
Yeah.
The bad news is this position here, it would have to make a hard right turn to come into Manatee and Sarasota County if that's the current position the National Hurricane Center is showing.
Yeah.
So would you expect at 5 o'clock for them to start focusing a little more north?
Typically, this far into the picture, they don't make a lot of changes.
Yeah.
They're like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I was talking to my same buddy, actually, Steve Bowen, a local guy, and he said the exact same thing a couple hours ago. It's going to have to make a really hard right to actually go in, because what Jason's saying is, east-west latitudinally, it's already almost at Sarasota. And it ain't going to make a hard right. It's not going to hook right at a 90-degree angle. So, yeah, I mean, you have, it's kind of why we're saying keeping it open for the possibility of a track closer to the bay. And like we said, that would change the surge, I would guess, at least 3 to 4 feet.
Right. So I think over the next hour and a half, we're really going to see, is this more Pinellas, Hillsborough County now, or if this Manatee, Sarasota is still in play. Either way, the surge numbers are still going to be huge regardless south of it, but this may bring those higher values a little more to the north.
And you could argue even the winds too, but again, as we said, overall the wind field is about the same. It's that 5 to 7 mile area, but that 5 to 7 mile area could be northern Manatee, maybe even southern Pinellas. And I'll tell you, last night I was watching a model that came out, the graph, and Wendy was actually over there and we looked at it. and it had 101 mile an hour winds in St. Pete.
Yeah.
And it had the eye very close to St. Pete. And I looked at it, and I actually did not show it on TV because the hurricanes, what happens is, we kind of defer to the Hurricane Center track often. I mean, that's kind of, they're the expert of all experts, right?
Best of the best.
Yeah. So when I see a model, that's just one model, that is so different from the NHC track, we're kind of like, well, let's just don't show it because it would be confusing.
Yep.
But Wendy and I, we looked at it, and if what you're saying makes a lot of sense, I mean, that might very well come to pass, which would mean if you live in southern Pinellas, you would have to expect some stronger winds and potentially more surge.
All right, so I think that's what we're going to be watching over the next hour, hour and a half, to see if we see more of a wobble to the east, because that's what the latest map is showing. And we don't get track updates until we get to that 11 a.m., 5 p.m., 11 p.m., 5 a.m. So the next track update is going to set up for us at 5, and it'll probably have an adjustment here, because now, like Dennis said, I was looking at that observation, still pertinent, but we throw the track out when it's basically landfall time. And that's what we're watching here now. So let's talk about it, and then we're going to get into if there are any tornado warnings out there that I need to cover. Of course, we've had significant warnings in our inland spots. 125 now, that's the 4 o'clock advisory. We'll get the next advisory here at the top of the hour coming up at 5. Movement has picked up 1 mile per hour. It was 16 miles per hour earlier today. It's now up to 17 miles per hour. And clearly you can see that movement to the northeast, and there's Sarasota County, there's Manatee County, and it's now reached latitudinally here both of those counties. So if it were to landfall here, as the projection was earlier today, we would start to see more of that hard right turn, and we're not seeing that right now. On this north-northeasterly trajectory, if it were to continue without a turn to the east, then this clearly puts in those high surge forecasts, those reasonable worst case scenarios from the National Hurricane Center into Pinellas and Hillsborough County as well. So that's what we're watching. A couple of observations too about the storm, and Dennis hinted on this over the last couple of days. The south end, once you get past this part of the center, you're basically having no rain, still those strong winds. You'll just get some wind without the rain as this starts to move a bit more to the east over the next couple of hours. Looking at the radar, we had widespread tornado warnings in Polk, Highlands, DeSoto, and Hardee counties. Happy to say that right now the current map shows no tornado warnings. What this does show is in green, we have flash flood warnings, meaning flash flooding. If it hasn't started already, it will easily begin here over the next couple of hours. So we have 2 highlighted. One of them covers DeSoto, Hardee, Highlands, and Hillsborough County, also Manatee and Polk counties. The other one covers Pinellas County. This was an issue earlier today. And both of these go till 5:30, 6:15. Don't worry about the end times on these, because that does not mean that we're going to stop seeing flash flooding at that point, with the center now beginning to approach the coast. So that's the first thing I want to point out. Second thing, after, of course, not seeing a current tornado warning, the other thing is now we've got the eye clearly offshore, and we're beginning to see the hurricane force winds, those 74+ mile per hour winds, begin to approach the coast. So I'm going to draw a couple of lines here. Within this band here, these are strong tropical storm force winds at the coast now from Pinellas, Hillsborough, Sarasota, and Manatee. And Lauren, if you can you check on power outages and let me know what we're looking like there while I talk, and just interrupt me whenever you have those numbers.
Yeah, so we were actually going to talk about power outages once you guys were done, but we are seeing a significant
starting to go up. So that's because we're seeing now these strong tropical storm force winds. So these are winds that are 50, 60, 70 miles per hour now through Pinellas, Hillsborough, Sarasota, Manatee counties. Where the hurricane force winds start is just offshore, and it's within this band here. Once these move onshore, these are the sustained 74 mile per hour winds. These are the ones that Dennis was letting you know a second ago that extend out 30, 40 miles from the center, right? So 74+ mile per hour gusts in that band. The sustained winds will be shortly after that. And then the 100+ mile per hour winds, the ones around the eye, are right here. This is the pocket with 125 mile per hour winds. So we've got about a 3-hour period before we start to see those winds moving onshore. If it makes landfall farther south, we'll have a little bit of a stronger system. If it makes landfall a little north in Pinellas County or Hillsborough County at the mouth of the bay, we may get these numbers down to 115, 120 as the system is clearly in a weakening phase compared to its rapid intensification Cat 5 days a couple of days ago. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out on the radar. I also want to point out that in Hillsborough County, in Manatee County at Holmes Beach earlier today, we had in 1 hour 4 inches of rainfall reported from emergency managers. and we are still getting just completely soaked right now with these bands. These bands also setting up through Bradenton, Sarasota, Osprey, Venice, Siesta Key, down to Nokomis, Venice Beach, South Venice, all the way over to Northport and Inglewood. That's where these bands are setting up. But right there, just offshore, those are the hurricane force gusts that are already starting here to move very close to the beaches. So here in Sarasota and Manatee County, within an hour, hour and a half, you're going to start to get those 74 mile per hour wind gusts that are happening for you all.
We are less than 24 hours away from one of the top 10 most powerful hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin ever recorded. It will undoubtedly make landfall here across west central Florida, but this is a game of miles, and miles matter. Let me explain. This is the latest satellite. We are.
As Hurricane Milton approaches, people have been told to get out of town, and many have evacuated the city with a population of 400,000. I'm with a man who is staying put right here, Joseph Malinowski. Hi, Joseph. You're on your boat, Seashell, and you're not going anywhere. You to
deliver.
What? ¿Quieres comprar?
I think you're going to see a lot of regret for those who didn't evacuate, okay? Especially from about Pasco County, which is north of Tampa, all the way down toward Fort Myers Beach. This will be a life-changing and a beach-changing hurricane with the kind of storm surge that we're expecting. That is the biggest threat to the law.
Hundred.
Hundreds still unaccounted for, like Julie LaRoe.
El huracán Milton de categoría 5.
¿Qué te parece?
El huracán Milton estará llegando a esta costa de Florida en más de 12 horas.
Con hora por hora. 1 de la mañana, 2 de la mañana. Miren, síganme, mi gente. Síguenme, mi gente. 2 de la mañana del jueves. Sigan para que ustedes vean.
Look at how.
Tonight with
Una vez. Personne n'a encore relevé ce défi.
mile-per-hour wind gusts that are happening for you all. Now back north in Pinellas County, very heavy band coming in now through St. Pete, Kenneth City, Leoman, over to Pinellas Park, Feather Sound, the Gandy area, Indian Rocks Beach, Reddington Shores, and we're also looking at Madeira Beach, Treasure Island, St. Pete Beach, Paso Grill, all completely covered up by these bands. And we talked about this just 2 weeks ago when we were covering Helene, and then a couple of months ago when we were covering Debbie. Hurricane winds are much stronger the higher up you go, and these bands, what they do is they work to pull that down to the surface. So every time one of these areas of red, orange, or yellow come through your neighborhood, that's where you're going to have those stronger wind gusts that are setting up. So that's what we're looking at now moving through Pinellas County. We've got a little bit of a lull from those extreme bands here in Tampa right now, but to our north, Lake Magdalene, Thonotosassa, up toward Odessa, Lutz, you're seeing the heavy rainfall here for you. Let's go over to Lakeland because you have been saturated and under a flash flood warning now in Lakeland. Movement quickly off to the north-northwest with these bands roughly at about 50-55 miles per hour is how quickly these individual cells are moving within these bands. And then as we continue to travel north, while the winds have not been too problematic for you at the Nature Coast at this point, you're just now beginning to get into those tropical storm force gusts, and we're looking at some very heavy rainfall setting up here across Pasco County. Backing out the radar, this is also a huge concern for us tonight, is see this huge area of convection just north of the eye. If the eye makes landfall here, that huge convection area is going to be moving in generally this direction. That's going to produce 4 to 6 inches of rainfall per hour, and that could be for 4 to 5 hours as the eye is moving at about 17 miles per hour. This is setting up the significant flood threat that Dennis has been talking about as we've been going into the last couple of hours. Huge flood risk, flash flooding for our inland spots, Hillsborough, Polk, Pinellas, Nature Coast, and over to Sumter and Lake counties. This is where we could see isolated totals well over 12 inches of rainfall, maybe even up to 18 inches of rainfall. I want you to think back to Hurricane Debbie when it was rolling by in Sarasota and Manatee County. It produced 20 inches of rainfall. We could see numbers just shy of that, and you remember the extensive flooding that it was causing during those times. Dennis asked me to pull up the tide times too, and then Ileana, one more time, tell me what you were saying. Okay. If you're wondering about tide times, we are hitting low tide now, or we've already hit low tide. Our next high tide, except for Crystal River, is tomorrow morning between 3 and 7 a.m. So we're seeing the tide coming in now, but it's not jumping up to high tide until the storm is going to be over to the East Coast. So there may be some help there. Crystal River's high tide showing up at 10:24, another low tide a little after midnight, and then the next high tide around 9 a.m. for you all. So if you are wondering about the tide times pertinent to the surge times and when they're coming in, this is what it looks like. It's a little better than what it was back when we had Helene, because it was coming in as we were peaking out at high tide. That will not be the case with this storm, although I will say that once the circulation moves to the east, the wraparound circulation brings in winds back in off the water. So surge forecast, those worst numbers that they put out that Dennis was showing you a second ago, very reasonable for that to be the case. All right, so that's where we're at now. Who are we going to go out to first? We have some live crews out into the field. Let me know where you guys want me to go, or do you want me to?
I think we're going to give some power outages first
yes,
to let folks know where most of the outages are occurring. If we can go to that, are you guys having? You have ready some of the? If we can start with Tico, great. Okay, so this is the map for Tico. We're continuing. I want you to take a look. Tico now is reporting more than 10,000 customers have already lost electricity. And the major areas for these outages are South Tampa, Sun City Center, and near Seffner. Also, Duke Energy has over 12,000 outages, and Florida Power and Light, that's FPL, 7,700 homes in Manatee with no power, and almost 1,000 outages in Sarasota. So again, Duke Energy, of course, FPL, and Tico all reporting just countless power outages, and really the storm hasn't even made close to landfall, so we know those numbers will go way up as the winds come into the Bay Area. And here's an important reminder: we want you to be able to reach us 24/7 before, during, and after Hurricane Milton. So you just want to scan that QR code on your screen to download our apps. This way you can stay connected to us even if you lose power or signal. You can watch us on your phone.
So since we're talking about your phone right now, just plug it into the charger right about now if you still have power. And to download our apps, take out your cell phone right now and go to your app store, search ABC Action News, and then click download. It's super simple. It's free. Once you're in the ABC Action News app, you'll actually see a live feed right at the top of the homepage. So what you're watching on television right now is exactly what you'll be able to watch on your phone. So just get that downloaded right now, because unfortunately, based off of the wind we're talking about, all the rain, knocking down trees likely, we're going to see a lot of power outages tonight.
No doubt. And as Hurricane Milton continues to barrel towards the state of Florida, residents in the Palma Vista neighborhood in Bradenton are gearing up to ride out the storm.
And that's where we find ABC Action News anchor Paul Legrone. He just arrived at his location to be there as the storm makes landfall. So, Paul, what are you hearing from people living down there who you're talking to?
Well, a lot of them did decide to stay. They boarded up their homes, but they are going to ride out Hurricane Milton. We're starting to see the wind pick up a little bit. I measured it, 50-mile-an-hour gusts, 30 sustained just a few minutes ago. The rain is the biggest force right now. You know, welcome to the neighborhood. Here we are in Bradenton. This neighborhood, I'm told, Palma Vista, Palma Sola, it's a tight-knit community here. I think one of the concerns is going to be the flooding. We measured about 22 feet elevation here. We're starting to see some minor street flooding already. The rain spraying off the roofs of people's homes as the wind is blowing it all over the place. But this was an evacuation zone D, D zone. People really didn't evacuate it. They did board up their windows, but they tell me they feel comfortable. We actually spoke to a couple who lives in that home over there, Carl and Gigi from Boston. They've experienced plenty of nor'easters. They tell me nothing compares to the hurricanes they've experienced in recent years. As the rain starts to pick up here in their neighborhood, they're going to ride it out, and they had this message for Tampa Bay tonight. This is what they told me earlier. On the drive down from Tampa to Bradenton today, Milton's rains arrived.
Your car is basically coming out just past here.
And so did we, gearing up to go live. 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, that's about what the wind gusts are approaching right now in this early stage of Hurricane Milton. We talked to a couple that lives in that home, Carl and Gigi from Boston. They're going to stay there. They didn't board up, but they tell me they feel safe. Let me ask you, you guys are here. This is your home. How do you feel? What are your thoughts right now?
Well, a little nervous, obviously. I mean, the build-up of this one, it's a little scary. But trying to ride it out, I mean, as best we can. We do have shelters right around the corner from us, and I work up the street. There's a place I take care of the elderly, and it's a safe building there if I need to go to. So,
yeah,
trying to ride it out.
We've been here 7 years, and we're here for 3 weeks when Irma came. Actually, that's been the worst one since we've been here.
Yeah.
Adelia skimmed us. Helene skimmed us.
All of them.
We got broken up with Irma coming from, Naples
Right.
where it did, so we were lucky, but we still felt the winds for a good 24 hours. But
Yeah.
we were nervous about this one a lot.
Yeah.
And Carl, it seems like they did a decent job of cleaning up the debris around here, so you don't have those flying projectiles like we've seen in other neighborhoods.
Well, like we said, we were very lucky. We didn't have flooding around here, like, of course, the water over there. And just
We're in a
tree
no-flood
limbs. We're in a no-flood zone here. But, I mean, it could still happen. You never know.
You never know, but we're about to find out, and we're up and running live. As Dennis said earlier, it's nowcast time, and it's time for real-time reporting, and here we are. Just wanted to give you a little bit behind the scenes of where we're set up to go here from. I call it the Hurricane Hotel. Coming in here, it's basically an Airbnb home. That's the relay from what you just saw, the image behind me, up and running right now. Obviously, we've got the power. So this neighborhood right now still has power, and we're hoping it stays that way, obviously. But everyone really here is prepared, even though they are riding out the hurricane. And we're about 3 miles south of the Manatee, the river, and we're about a few miles east of the Intercoastal. Storm surge was a big concern here, and as you guys have been reporting back there, and Jason Adams and Dennis Phillips, the storm right now is evolving before our very eyes, and as you guys are measuring that on the radar, we're feeling it out here in real time. And does this go to the north? Does it make the hard right here into the Bradenton, Palmetto, Sarasota corridor? This is the page turner that we're all experiencing together throughout Tampa Bay. So we'll be here every step of the way, and we'll be here all night long until the storm is done. Guys, back to you.
All right, Paul, thank you. Of course, we'll check back in with you as this storm continues to move inland. And we're continuing to check on conditions in Pinellas County as well, where winds are picking up.
Yeah, ABC Action News reporter Kylie McGivern joins us now live from Seminole. Kylie, this is the first time we've heard from you this afternoon. I hear that wind blowing against you. How's it going out there? How have you seen things change?
Yes, just even within the last few minutes, I would say the wind has certainly picked up. We're in Pinellas County for people who are joining us right now. We're in Seminole where we are away from the evacuation zones. As you drive around this area, you guys, the storm surge is not going to be the concern as much. You see the rain coming down, of course, but what we're seeing in neighborhood after neighborhood, which is encouraging, as you see right over here, is some windows that are boarded up. It's more of the wind that is the concern as Milton makes its way over. And we spoke to some folks in the area. I'm out here with our photojournalist.
What will you do when the power goes out? Power outages can be unpredictable and inconvenient, but with a Generac home standby generator.
You know what? I'm deciding to stay. This is different, certainly, than a snowstorm, but he has also got storm shutters that are outside of his home right now. Again, this is in an area that is a bit higher up. It's not in the immediate evacuation zones, but as we were driving around earlier as well, just because we're joining you all for the first time, something we've been reporting on these last couple of weeks is all of the debris that is still here from Helene. A lot of that picked up in some areas, a lot of it not in others. So that continues to be a concern as well, as we have gone and seen different areas that are shut off. Earlier today, some of the bridges, the Howard Franklin Bridge, as we were making our way out to this part of the county, closed moments after we came across it, maybe around 12:30 this afternoon. We also were over near a bridge that was blocked off that would have brought you out to the Treasure Island area, Reddington Shores area, Indian Shores. This is all in an attempt to keep people safe as we continue to tell people now really to stay off of the roads. I will tell you, when we came out here, we saw hardly anybody out on the road. So it seems that people have either heeded those evacuation warnings or they really are staying in their homes, which are boarded up in so many areas that we're seeing, including where we are staying right now. So we will continue to check in with you all, but yes, the wind is certainly picking up. But for now, we're in Pinellas County. We will send it back to you.
And Kylie, you know, you're from this area, you're from Tarpon Springs. Dennis is talking about this is the first major hurricane to hit the Bay Area in 103 years. What is this like for you as someone who grew up here and have gone through many hurricanes?
It's a little emotional to think about because it's like this is the storm that we have talked about, or the possibility of the damage that we have talked about, you know, my whole life essentially. In the last storm with Helene, you know, my dad, he stayed at home, the house I grew up in Tarpon, which is up on stilts. That was really the only reason they did not have more damage. But I've got to tell you guys, like so many people across the Bay Area, it came higher than it had ever come before. They live right on the water in Tarpon Springs, which is beautiful. It's great until it's not. And with this storm, they did not mess around at all. I mean, my family, like so many others, heeded those evacuation warnings. My sister lives in Orlando. They're with her right now. They're probably watching right now, but it is something that I know my mom called and she said, you know, we're really thinking about what we need to bring because we just don't know. We just don't know what's going to happen. And so as we continue to cover these storms, you know, I've been back in this area about 6 years now. I've covered storms all across the country. It certainly is different when it is in your own backyard and you're telling stories, as we've told with Helene, of people who've lost everything, family, friends, and people that I've grown up with and that I went to high school with and elementary school with. And so this is something that we're all looking at each other saying that this is concerning. You know, in the past, I know a lot of us talk about, yeah, this is part of living here. You cover hurricanes, you cover storms. This comes with the territory. But this is, it feels more personal. And again, this is right on the heels of another storm where it has been so sobering among so many other words about the power of what this can do. So I've heard just a lot of people saying they are praying, they are sending prayers, they are getting out, they are taking action, and they are watching Dennis Phillips. Everyone I know, I mean, this is what we do. We are here to bring you the information that we can to keep you and your family safe as we think about our own families as well. And so we will be here through the rest of this storm, and we'll continue to bring you updates. But that's what's going on with the McGiverns.
Yeah. All right, Kylie, you stay safe out there, and I can certainly understand
Thank you guys so much.
The emotional part of it, of course. Paula Grown, of course, growing up in Plant City said the same thing, that it's just like when you see it's your hometown. And I've been here 20 some years. Dennis has been here over 30 years. And we've talked about this, like every time it doesn't hit Tampa Bay, it doesn't hit the Bay Area. And now here we are 103 years later, and it's hitting our own backyard. And it is emotional because now this is our home, and it's very emotional to know what's to come. All right, we're tracking conditions in Polk County as well. And as we know, Hurricane Milton will cross the state and as it barrels into our state of Florida.
Yeah, and that's where we find ABC Action News reporter Mary O'Connell. Mary, how are things looking in Lakeland right now?
Hey guys, we're in and out of bands right now. Actually, about a half hour ago, it was a little bit heavier rain, but right now you can see here it's pretty light, which means, as this kind of goes in a circular fashion, it'll be heavier on and off. But we have noticed that people here in Lakeland and in Polk County and our drive over here appear to be heeding those warnings. When I was driving into the station on 275 earlier today, nobody was on the roads. On the drive on I-4 from Tampa to Lakeland, we noticed not many cars on the road at that point either. And even driving around Lakeland, there really weren't that many people here. I know our colleague Rebecca earlier was at gas stations watching people trying to get gas earlier today, but since then people are really hunkering down here. I know this area was largely spared from Hurricane Helene, the concern being for this storm, those high winds that we may see later, any kind of flooding that we might see later as well. But as you can see, at least for the time being, those rain bands are kind of moving on out, and it's pretty light rain here for the time being. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Mary. We do want to turn our coverage now to Hillsborough County.
And ABC Action News reporter J.J. Burton joins us live in Riverview. J.J., the last time we checked in with you, folks were very concerned about the downed trees that could happen through this storm. Any new concerns? How are things out there?
The trees still the big concern out here for folks in this neighborhood. We're in Wayett Springs here in Riverview, and we are here with Matt Bolden. You're one of our neighbors. You're right over there. We were talking to you earlier. The rain eased up, and now it's coming again. It's coming hard in waves. So it's you, your dogs, your wife, and your son over there, and you got all the boards up. You're going to hunker down. What else have you done to prepare for that?
We closed all our interior doors, and we have a safe spot inside the house within the hallway, so we know if anything goes awry, that's where we're heading.
Now, you've been here for 4 years. You grew up in California. We were talking about the difference between earthquakes and this. You were saying so what's more scary or
they're both scary, but the earthquakes are so unpredictable. You don't know whether they're coming, but you don't see anything like this anywhere else. So a hurricane is definitely not something to not fear.
And your neighbors as well. We were talking about everyone. There's a lot of people that stayed. Some have left. Some have gone. And you were saying for 4 years you've dealt with some storms and stuff coming and going, but it was your neighbors that really had you nervous because they were preparing big time for this one. We see the boards up over the windows, the boards up over the doors, and the stuff like that.
Yeah, the neighbors to the right of us have been here 35 years. They evacuated. The neighbors across the street boarded up. They've been here 30 years. So that's brought an extra level of fear that you just don't anticipate with a storm like this.
Now, this isn't an evacuation zone, and flooding isn't really a huge concern here. I mean, we've still got a lot of water, like you said, it's going to cause some damage. But there's a lot of trees here, and you were also explaining how, I guess, the last storm a couple months or so ago, there was a huge tree in front of this house here, and it blew up sort of because the wires hit it and stuff like that. So there's more trees out here. That's a concern.
Yeah, a lot of big trees here, a lot of swaying leaves going back and forth. That's a big concern for us, and we hope that all our neighbors and everyone around us put their stuff in, and we don't see any projectiles floating around when this thing hits.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. And again, like we said, a lot of people in this neighborhood have stayed. We've seen that they've got the boards up, and there's people, all the folks that I've talked to out here, I've been knocking on some doors and just saying, hi, I'm JJ with ABC, and they're all staying in the house, and they're watching, and they're saying that they are definitely going to stay in the house, and they're not even going to come up and out until even after they know that it's safe to do so. They've been watching, listening to Dennis, listening to Shay, and listening to everyone else, telling them what to do, and again, to stay safe. And all we have right now, we have the rain and the wind, but it's been coming and going on and off here in Riverview. Reporting in Riverview, I'm JJ Burton, ABC.
JJ, thank you. I'm just picturing a family sitting on their couch, watching us, watching whatever news channel they like to watch. And JJ,
knocking on the door. Hey, just saying hi.
So thanks for talking with us.
Yeah, and I'm glad that folks are watching because that means they're hunkering down and staying safe. Yeah.
We do want to go further south now to Palmetto in Manatee County.
Yeah, that's right. ABC Action News reporter Katie LeGrone is in Palmetto. You were out in the elements earlier. I understand now you're at a shelter, Katie. So I'm wondering, is it full with folks who have evacuated out there?
Yeah, there's a ton of people who have evacuated. Very quickly, I wanted to show you the conditions. These are some of the gustiest winds we have seen, the heaviest rainfall we have seen since we arrived in Palmetto around noontime today. In fact, these gusts of the gusts of wind and the rain so strong now that here at the shelter that we're at, and we're at Virgil Mills Elementary School, the outside, we're just outside the front doors, and this is where people come out to get a breath of fresh air, you know, smoke, whatever they want to do, and they have actually been told in just the past few minutes to all go inside because the conditions are heating up so fast out here and so furiously. And so you've got hundreds of people. In fact, right now, the number of people here at this shelter is nearly 1,000. For some perspective, the principal of the school, when I spoke with him, I said, is this the most people you've ever seen? He goes, Katie, the most I ever saw prior to the storm was back in Hurricane Helene just 2 weeks ago, where they had nearly 400 people who sought shelter at the school. Today, there are nearly 1,000. Across Manatee County, they have 18 shelters set up, and more than 10,000 people have evacuated from their homes and are now seeking refuge in those shelters. So that gives you an idea of just how seriously the people of Palmetto are taking this storm. Remember, Palmetto is surrounded by water on three sides. Manatee River on the north side, Terracea on the south, and of course Tampa Bay on the west. So the big issue, the big concern, much like we've heard around Tampa Bay, is that surge. They dealt with 4 to 5 feet of storm surge during Helene. If projections are what we believe they could be, we're looking at potentially 12 up to 15 feet of storm surge here. So people are taking this seriously. People are evacuating. I want to bring in Stephanie. She's a mom and her son, her young son, 5 years old. They came here. They evacuated. Stephanie, I know you've been very patient with me. So live, but why did you decide to evacuate?
Since they said the storm was 100 years, they have never seen anything like this. There's no resources, live resources that I could actually speak to get knowledge. What should I do? Where can I go? So we just came here to be safe.
Where are you coming from?
Downtown Palmetto, right across from the Palmetto Library on the side of the historical. Close to the water, but I mean, we're at 18-foot surge. I'm a sea, and we got evacuated.
How concerned are you about what you're going to go home to after this?
Since they did literally just said Manatee County is the direct hit, I have to be strong for him because that's everything. I'm a single mom. His dad passed away 2 years ago, and that's all we got. So my mom, like half of her roof, Lanai, came off from Helene, which wasn't even a hurricane. So now she's dealing with like a weakened health, and that's her. That's $200,000 that we can now probably not move to because we don't have any more money after that. But oh well. I'm afraid. I'm afraid because no one has ever experienced what they're saying is going to happen at like 8 o'clock into the morning of Thursday. So when we leave here, if we're able to on Thursday morning, we don't know. We might not even be able to because the roads are flooded. I probably won't even be able to get downtown. What am I going to do? Where do I go? In our house, I don't have money.
Do you feel the love around you? There are a lot of people here. There's a lot of volunteers.
I personally know volunteers. A lot of the other schools here, and I decided to come here because I work with her husband, and I just feel like it's at least I'll know somebody because I've never been to a shelter before. And he's been through 4 hurricanes, and we've always stayed at home because I live on the 2nd floor, concrete building, strong building, but not strong enough for this. I feel felt it in my gut.
Your little guy, 4 hurricanes in 5 years.
Yeah.
No sé, down, avanza, insomma. Bomba. No. Bueno, queda uno, se está viviendo. Se vivió.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.